In episode 3, the Bridgertons are planning on having their big party of the season. They have it every single year. They basically invite the entire town. And they have it at their summer home, Aubrey Hall. But before that, they decide to invite Edwina, Kate, and Lady Danbury just for a few days so that Edwina can get acquainted with the family. Edwina knows that this is a big weekend for her. If everything goes well, she'll be engaged when she leaves. But before they arrive, the Bridgertons all get together. That includes Daphne. Daphne has brought her newborn, Augie, and after she hands off Augie to her mom, she starts talking to Anthony about how the season's going. He lets her know that things are going so well with one particular girl that he's invited her to the house for the weekend. She's great. Her sister, she sucks. Anthony then tells all of his brothers and sisters that they're supposed to help him win over the hearts of not just Edwina, but also Kate as well, because she has such a big say in who Edwina marries. Daphne kind of chuckles and says, well, seeing as you were such a help to me in my season, how could I not help you out? They then get word that the carriage with Kate, Edwina, and Lady Danbury have arrived, and Danbury is first out. She's so excited to see her great godchild. Lady Mary and Lady Bridgerton then say hello to each other, but the first person that Anthony talks to isn't Edwina, it's Kate. Anthony notices that Kate has brought her dog, and Kate says, yes, Newton is an excellent judge of character. And that's because Newton is barking at Anthony. He tells her, well, rest assured, by the end of the weekend, I'll have won you both over. They get interrupted when Daphne walks over and says, you must be Miss Edwina. And Anthony is horrified. He lets her know, no, this is her sister Kate. Edwina then walks over, gets introduced to Daphne, and then everybody starts heading into the actual house. But right before they enter, Anthony pulls his mother aside and says, I think I'm going to need the ring from you. Lady Bridgerton goes and gets it, but she wants to make sure her son is certain of his decision. She's worried that maybe Anthony is rushing things and he should get to know Edwina before he makes such a big decision. He doesn't really need to do that. He knows that Edwina would make the perfect Viscountess. He also finds his mother amusing because she'd wanted him to marry for years, and now that he's ready to marry, she wants to make sure that he's got a, quote, clear mind. As those two are discussing his possible engagement, Daphne is outside showing Edwina and Kate around. Mainly, a game they all play called Pall Mall, which I'm just going to call it croquet. There's probably a difference, but I'm calling it croquet. Hit thumbs down for that editorial change. But this is a big tradition with the Bridgerton kids. They get together, they play this game, and it gets extremely heated. Daphne starts telling Edwina and Kate about everybody's strategies and what to look out for. They then all come out, and it's time to actually pick your mallet. They start arguing about what order you get to pick, and Daphne says, well, the only fair thing to do is let our guests pick first. Edwina picks hers, but when Kate picks the, quote, mallet of death, everyone starts looking at each other because that is known as Anthony's mallet. He is absolutely fuming, but he has to hold himself in a higher standard as not to turn off Edwina. Kate, however, sees right through it. She knows that it irks the Viscount. They then start the game. And as all the kids play, Lady Bridgerton and Lady Mary start talking about the children. But they also have another common bond. They're both widows. As they're getting acquainted with each other, Lady Danbury walks up, and both Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton start discussing their love match from the previous year and how that was a success. And maybe this year's matchmaking will be an even bigger success. That, of course, being Anthony and Edwina. And that's because Edwina is acing every single test that she's been given. Although it's not like the family is putting her through the ringer or anything like that. Back over on the field of play, the group comes to a conundrum. Kate's ball is right next to Anthony's. The rules state that you can try to bash your ball through the wicket, or you could hit an opponent's ball farther away from a wicket. Kate knows this. So she asks Anthony, what should I do? Are you in a mood to lose? And Anthony has to act like he won't be bothered if Kate hits his ball. So Kate smashes the crap out of it through the woods, and now the only way he can continue to play is to go retrieve it. Edwina is then up next, and she hits her ball into a bush, but she doesn't really feel like playing anymore. The competitive nature of all the Bridgertons have kind of turned her off to the game, because in her words, this is just a game. So she bows out, telling Anthony, have your fun, but I'm going to go back to the house and enjoy some refreshments. The next Bridgerton up is Colin, and unfortunately for Kate, Colin's ball is right next to Kate's, and he does the same thing Kate did. He smashes her ball right into the woods, the same woods that Anthony's ball was headed into. Now, both Kate and Anthony have to head into the woods to retrieve their balls, and it seems like Colin knew what he was doing when he did this. Both Kate and Anthony are not happy about the situation, but they get even more pissed off when they see where their balls landed, a mud pit. Kate starts saying that they could pull the balls out and no one would be any the wiser, but Anthony says, I would know. He feels like this may be one of Kate's tests to see his morality, and in fact, it was, because she admits that as soon as they got out of there, she would have told on him. Anthony's a little hesitant to get in the mud, but Kate isn't. She ruins her shoes, her dress. She gets right up in there and hits her ball out. Anthony wants to save face, so he also gets in there, ruining his boots and hits his out. Anthony's able to leave the mud with no problem, but Kate gets stuck. Anthony reluctantly tries to help her out of the mud, but they both end up falling into it. At first, he's kind of pissed off, but then they just have a good laugh about it. When they finally climb out, all dirty and disgusting, Anthony asks, what do I have to do to win your approval? And she explains that she's not doing it out of spite, she just wants to steer her sister to the best possible match. She thought that he would understand since he has sisters. He says, then let's put that behind us. Allow me to prove this weekend that I can provide your sister all the happiness she deserves. So they agree on a truce, but their balls are still right next to each other. And Kate hits his in an unfortunate location. She doesn't know it, but it's the location of his father's memorial. Because Aubrey Hall was where his father died. Of all things, a bee sting. That's right, his father was Macaulay Culkin from the hit 90s movie My Girl. Now, this probably happens more than you think, but still. Yeah, so he died of a bee sting, and that's why Aubrey Hall has always been an emotional place for Anthony to go to. It's where he watched his father die, but it's also where he became the Viscount at the age of 18. So when Kate hit his ball over to the memorial that she can't see, he just stopped playing entirely. She eventually goes over to retrieve the ball and sees the memorial and feels like an idiot. Anthony heads inside, gets dressed in, clean clothes, and then has a one-on-one with Edwina. It's not quite a one-on-one, though, because Lady Bridgerton and Lady Danbury are over in the corner eavesdropping, but the conversation between Edwina and Anthony goes great. They really hit it off. They bond over their differences. The fact that Edwina loves to read and the fact that Anthony doesn't. That night, as they're getting ready for bed, Edwina starts telling Kate all about how perfect Anthony is. And when Kate starts bringing up how Anthony must have just talked about himself the whole time, Edwina corrects her and says, no, he asked about me. He asked about my interests. He asked about the books I didn't read. It does make Kate think twice about her preconceived notions on Anthony. They are unaware, by the way, that outside Lady Danbury is eavesdropping on the conversation. And right down the hall, Lady Bridgerton is doing the same thing to Anthony and Daphne. But Daphne has the same questions that her mother did about Anthony rushing into this relationship. She's worried that her brother isn't actually in love. They don't want to come right out and say that, so the way they word it is, well, if you're sure, we just want to make sure you're making the right decision, but if she gives you that feeling, and Anthony doesn't know what Daphne's talking about. So Daphne describes the feeling of when you burn for somebody. The more and more she describes it, the more Anthony realizes he doesn't get that feeling with Edwina. But the fact is, he's not looking for a love match anyway. He's looking for someone to be comfortable with. So at the end of the day, that feeling that Daphne's describing doesn't matter to him. Outside of the room, Lady Danbury makes her way downstairs as Lady Bridgerton is walking away from the door. And Lady Danbury gives Lady Bridgerton the biggest cheesing smile. The next day, as Kate is having tea on the veranda, Eloise comes out to read. And since they have a good relationship, she confides in Eloise that she might have upset Anthony during the game. And because of where the ball was, she knows it must have involved something with her father's grave. She explains to Kate that Anthony doesn't really go there much at all. Eloise then returns Kate's question with a question of her own. Was it Kate's choice that she never got married? Because everybody tells her that you'd rather die than be a spinster, but then there's Kate, who seems completely content with her status. Kate explains that it is difficult because the world isn't accepting of an unmarried woman. Eloise says, well, that seems to be society's flaw, not a woman's. And that's something that they both agree on wholeheartedly. But it's ironic that the conversation about Anthony avoiding his father's grave was even brought up, because in that moment, he decided to go visit the grave for the first time in God knows how long. As he's staring at it, his mother walks up with some flowers to put at the base of it. His mother then sits him down by a bench because she can tell that she's being troubled by this decision. He should be happy, but he's not. He says, I'm fulfilling my duty to this family. And she says, well, your father did that, but he was also able to be in love. She thinks that deep down, Anthony does want that, even though he says the exact opposite. He seemed to be on that trek until his father died. Then a wall went up. And that's the issue. When Anthony's father passed away, he had to deal with it. He was the new Viscount. His mother was able to grieve and mourn. And he tells her, you don't remember it, but I do. Anthony never wants to feel that way again, thus he's not allowing himself to fall in love. He then walks off and they get ready for dinner. And everybody's there. including Colin and Benedict. And Benedict is tripping balls on something else. Colin brought back some powder that is some form of 1800s drug, and Benedict took a whole bunch of it. So he's in another world. He's acting a little out of hand. So in order to get everybody's mind off of what Benedict is doing, Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton say it's time for a toast, or if anybody else has any pressing matters. And what they're alluding to is Anthony proposing. Anthony stands up, and he's about to. He's making a speech, but then he looks over at Kate. Kate is not approving. When it comes time to actually ask the words, "Will you marry me?" Anthony doesn't. He makes up a quick excuse on the spot, acting as if this was never going to be the question, and it breaks Edwina's heart. That night, as she's getting ready for bed, she cries to her sister that she must have done something wrong. And Kate is explaining to her that you did nothing wrong, and there'll be plenty of other guys. But Edwina's big concern is when everybody shows up for the party in a couple days and they find out that they're not engaged, guys are going to start to wonder what's wrong with her, and she's never going to marry. The only thing Kate can do is try to console her sister and remind her that in the end of the day, she's the diamond of the season. Everybody's after her. While she is dealing with bad news, right down the hall, Benedict is getting some good news. One of the reasons why he took this hallucinogenic is because he's stressed out. He applied to an art school, and he needed to get his mind off things. The hallucinogenic definitely did that. But then he receives the acceptance letter, and he loses his mind. He freaks out in joy. As he's screaming out the window, Eloise mentions how Benedict is going to be as insufferable as Colin is, because Colin hasn't shut up about his journey since he's returned. She asks him, if it was so great in Greece, why didn't you stay? And then he reveals, it's because of Miss Thompson. He asks how she is and if Eloise ever hears from her, and Eloise corrects him and says, oh, you mean Miss Crane. Let's not forget, she's married. But she's also not far away. And that's one of the reasons why Colin returned. Miss Thompson has been living rent-free in his head. The next day, Anthony is out by the garden, and Kate strolls up on a horse. She tells Anthony that her sister isn't feeling quite well. And Anthony tells her, I didn't mean to disappoint Edwina last night, but rest assured, she won't be disappointed for long. I still plan to propose. Last night just didn't feel right. They then start arguing about his decision, what he's doing, if he's toying with the emotions, and then he notices that a bee is flying around Kate. He freaks out. He tells her to stop, and she doesn't think anything of it because it's a bee. Even when the bee stings her, she doesn't think anything of it, but he starts hyperventilating. In order to calm him down, she grabs his hand and puts it to the bee sting, which is a little bit above her chest. She starts assuring him that he needs to calm down because it's only a bee sting, but their lips are getting closer and closer. They get super close to kissing until a horse neighing snaps them out of it. They then run away from each other and think about what they almost just did. But all of this was going down at Aubrey Hall. Back in town, the Featheringtons were dealing with an issue. Mrs. Featherington is definitely concerned that the new Lord Featherington is going to find a new woman and cast them out. So they need to stop that from happening. They start planning on finding a woman that is simply too dumb to get them out. And then she walks right in. It's Prudence. They explain to her that she will have to seduce the new Lord Featherington, which Penelope finds extremely gross because he's their cousin. But Lady Featherington starts selling it to her about how Prudence will be the new lady of the house. The whole time, though, she's just thinking about herself. But in order to seduce the new Lord Featherington, they're going to need new dresses. So they head to the modiste. The problem is the modiste starts making a dress that is normal. Mrs. Featherington wants to slutty up Prudence. The modiste isn't really willing to do it, so they head across the street because there's a new modiste in town. As Lady Featherington and Prudence leave, Penelope stays behind because she has to address what happened in the market. She starts kind of trying to explain why she was there, lying the entire time. But to her surprise, when she says, you might have seen me, the modiste says, no, I don't recall. The modiste can tell that Penelope is extremely uncomfortable with this conversation. She tells her a lady's business is only her own. She then leaves the modiste and head over to meet with her mother and her sister. Later that day, Operation Banging Your Cousin is a full go. Lady Featherington is even teaching Prudence how to attract him. Doesn't really work, though. When Lord Featherington walks in, he doesn't pay them any mind. Lady Featherington tries to get Prudence involved in the conversation, but she fails because she's an idiot. As he's leaving the room, he mentions to Lady Featherington how he's going to invite Cressida and her mother over for dinner, which Lady Featherington wants no parts of, but she doesn't have a choice. So the dinner is set up, and it is awkward. Lady Cowper is making the case for Cressida to marry Lord Featherington, and Cressida is doing a really good job of selling herself. All the while, though, Lady Featherington, on the other side of the table, is trying to insert Prudence into the conversation. And that doesn't work. Lord Featherington asks Cressida if she wants to hang out the next day. The next day, a new edition of Whistledown comes out. And there's not a whole lot of gossip, other than the fact that there's a new modiste in town, and everybody is flooding to her shop to get dresses, which is leaving the modiste that we know and love on the outside. She's losing business. This was even brought up at the dinner by the Cowpers, how the old modiste's dresses were simply that, old, tired. So in the latest edition of Whistledown, she points out that Cressida Cowper looks horrible in the new outfits. And while Madame Delacroix's dresses might be old, they're timeless. As the modiste is reading this, in walks Penelope. She explains to her that it is her job to be observant, but also to hide secrets, and she's really good at that. At this point, they both know what Penelope's secret is. But keeping that secret is becoming more and more difficult. Penelope knows that it's only a matter of time before somebody else catches her at the market, and they're not as quiet as Madame Delacroix. That's why she thinks that they can work together. Madame Delacroix helping her get the Whistledown pamphlets out. In return, Whistledown is going to write glowing things about Madame Delacroix. And it's already working. 2 women come into the store, and they need assistance. So now we have a partnership. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.